Raising backyard chickens is something that is a lot of fun, and it's really rewarding and something that you can do with your family. But most people have no clue where to start when it comes to raising a backyard flock of laying hens. And in this video, we're gonna give you a complete guide from A to Z on raising a backyard flock of chickens for you and your family. All right, so diving right in, the first thing you need to be aware of is just the cost involved in getting chickens, in building a chicken coop, and taking care of those birds. There are costs involved that you need to be aware of, and some things to really consider are, first off, are you home a lot? I think having chickens is something that's a blast, but it is a responsibility. It's like having a pet. If you're trying to leave town a lot, then you've got to get somebody to come feed the chickens, make sure to close them up at night, to make sure that they've got enough water. So if you're someone who just wants to travel the world, then getting chickens may not be the best option. Now, if you're a homebody and you want to stay where you're at and you don't really like to travel, then getting chickens is probably a great idea. For us, we are homebodies and we run a homestead, run a farm, so we don't really leave very often. So that's one big thing to consider when you are getting chickens. Now, the other thing to think about is the cost involved. You've got to purchase the chicks, which we will get into here in a minute. So that does take some money, and then you've got to get those chickens to where they begin laying, which takes about 6 months. So you're gonna have about 6 months of feed costs, and also you're gonna have the cost of building some type of structure for your chickens. So once you've decided that you're gonna get a flock of chickens, I would say you need to set aside $500 to maybe $1,000 for all of your infrastructure for those chickens. And you can do it cheaper, but that would be my suggestion. At this point though, you need to select a breed. And when selecting breeds, my encouragement to you is to select tried and true breeds. Don't get the exotic breeds because they look cool. You want to get breeds that are hardy, that can do well in the ever-changing climate that we experience in America. And the reason for this is exotic breeds tend to be really, really sensitive, and they don't do well when you've got, 0-degree temperatures and you've got 100-degree temperatures. So that's one thing to think about. The breeds that we personally have are the Rhode Island Red and the Barred Rock. These are very, very popular dual-purpose chicken breeds that lay anywhere from 200 to 250 eggs per year. So they're really good egg layers. And all dual-purpose means is when that chicken is done laying eggs in its life cycle at 3 or 4, 5 years old, at that point you can butcher that chicken and it can then be thrown in the crock pot and you've got meat for your family. All right, so the next thing you have to decide, and this is a controversial question, is should you get a rooster? We personally have had roosters in the past. We have also butchered roosters in the past. I personally love roosters, but it just depends. Sometimes you get a really mean one, sometimes you get a really nice one. So for us personally, all we have right now is all hens. We do not have any roosters. And the reason for that is our last rooster would attack anyone that went into the paddock or the area where the chickens were. So if you're gonna have your kids in there, maybe even your spouse is gonna go in there to get eggs, I personally do not want a rooster attacking any of my family members. So that's the reason right now we do not have a rooster. However, it just depends. Sometimes they're nice and sometimes they're mean. You don't need a rooster to get eggs though. The chickens will lay eggs without a rooster. However, the eggs will not be fertilized, just meaning that you can't go and then hatch the eggs for new baby chicks. Now, some argue that the rooster does play a role in protecting the hens and completing the social behavior and climate of the flock. And I think there is an argument to that. However, these birds will do just fine by themselves without a rooster, but a rooster will help some with predator prevention, which we're gonna talk about here in a little bit. Okay, so the next thing you need to decide is where you're gonna get your chickens from. So you have a few options. One is you can order baby chickens from a hatchery. There are plenty of chicken hatcheries across the country. One that we have used in the past is called Cackle Hatchery. They are in Missouri. You can also use McMurray Hatchery, which is a pretty popular hatchery amongst homesteaders and farmers. Now, if you don't want to purchase baby chicks and have to go through the 6-month process of getting that chicken to its point of laying its first egg, then you can buy what's called a pullet. Basically, a pullet is just an older chicken that is a teenager and is really close to its time of laying its first egg. So that will eliminate the time that you'll have of waiting to get your first egg from your chickens. One thing I would discourage against is buying some laying hens off of Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. You just don't know what you're getting. Those birds could be diseased. They could have some type of lice. You never know. And so in my opinion, I think the best way is to get baby chicks. And you can also go get baby chicks at Tractor Supply, which we've done before. And it's a lot of fun. I think it's part of the process to do with your family is getting those baby chicks, and they're tiny, and you get to nurture those to the point of where they're outside and they're foraging around on a pasture and they're laying you eggs. The process to me is really beautiful. And in my opinion, I think that a family getting to be a part of that whole process from the time you get a baby chick to the time it's laying, it's just really fun. Okay, so before you order those baby chickens, you're gonna need a brooder. And all a brooder is basically a place where you're gonna put your baby chicks. Now, we have one here that you see, it's on wheels that we built, and I'll put a link to that video if you're wanting to check that out. This is a little bit big though. If you're just wanting a brooder for maybe, 10 to 20 baby chicks, then what you can get is you can go to Tractor Supply or Lowe's or anywhere like that, and basically you can get a small watering trough, and that will work just fine for baby chicks. However, we've been using this and it's great because we can put a large number of birds in here. Anywhere from 50 to 100 can fit into this brooder. Now, the reason we built this brooder like this on wheels is because we're able to move it. So for instance, we'll put our baby chicks in the garage with a brooder light, which I'll show you here in a second, and whenever we want to take them outside on what we call a little field trip, we can just roll this out. And what we'll do is we'll just set up a little tiny enclosed area on grass on a warm, sunny day with not a lot of wind. And we'll let those birds begin to acclimate and just get some experience being on grass. And that allows them to get some natural forage other than simply just the feed that you're giving them. Now, when you've got that brooder set up, regardless of what time of year it is, you're gonna need some type of heating source. Those birds need a really set and controlled temperature because they're baby chicks and they're vulnerable. So the things that you're gonna need is either you can get a warming plate. This is off Amazon. It's from Rent a Coop. And if there's anything that I mention in this video, I will have links down below. And they are affiliate links, so if you do click them, I do earn a small commission, which helps support this channel and the work that we do here to educate. So if you want to check out any of these products that I'm mentioning, you can click my links and it'll take you to these products. So you can either use a warming plate or you can use a traditional heating lamp. This is going to be your most cost-effective way to maintain good warmth for your chickens. And personally, this is what we use, and I personally like this a lot more than a heating plate. And there are a lot of hatcheries that don't agree with heating plates, and they think that a true heat lamp is your best option. Obviously, there is a bit of a fire risk, but just make sure you hang it really well. And the way you want to measure a heating lamp with a baby chick, let's say that this is the base of the brooder, the ground. So you want to hang this to where they're not running to the sides of the brooder. If you've got this brooder lamp really low and your baby chicks are all the way into the corner away from the lamp, then you know that they are overheating and it's too hot. So you need to raise it up. And the perfect way to measure it is if they're just perfectly hanging out underneath this heat lamp, then you know you've probably got it set pretty well. But if they're all bundled up right into the center, then you probably need to lower it some more. Now, the other thing you're going to need a lot of in your brooder is pine shavings. Do not get cypress, do not get cedar. They are toxic within the respiratory tract of chickens. Get pine shavings and lay down a lot of them. And what will happen is over time, their manure and stuff will actually get soaked up by those pine shavings. So if you're ever dealing with smell coming from the brooder, that's because the manure load is too high. And so all you need to do to fix that is just add more pine shavings and you'll be good to go. So what are some things you need to look out for to make sure that your baby chicks are healthy? Well, the biggest thing is what's called pasty butt. And I know it sounds funny, but essentially what's taking place is when those chicks come in the mail, they have a 24-hour time frame where they're just living off of the yolk. and they don't need food or water at that time. And so that's how they're able to actually ship chicks in the mail. So when you get those chickens, they are going to be hungry and thirsty, and they are stressed out a little bit. And so what happens is they get manure buildup on their bottom. And if you don't look out for this, it will actually kill them because it blocks them being able to relieve themselves. So the best way to mitigate that is, if you do have chicks with pasty butt, is we actually have done a video on this, and I'll put a link above for you to check that out if you want to look at it later on. You can also go to our chicken playlist after this video to watch other videos that we've done. But the best way to do it is just to run their bottom under warm water, and you can actually just use your hands to break up that manure, and they're pretty much good to go. You can put them back into the brooder. Pasty butt is something that can continue to happen within the first couple of weeks that you have your baby chicks. So just keep an eye out for it. Okay, so you've got those baby chicks and they're getting rambunctious in that brooder. I get it. You're ready to get them outside. Well, when can you do it? That's a really, really good question. And from our experience, once your birds are fully feathered, then they can withstand outdoor temperatures. I would not throw your chickens out if it's the middle of winter and it's 0 degrees out. They're probably not going to fare very well. But if it's springtime, like it is right now, it's April, where you've got mild temperatures, then you can start to acclimate your chickens to outdoor temperatures. But the one thing you don't want to do is take them straight from the brooder and move them outside permanently. So what you're wanting to do is you're just wanting to acclimate those chickens to the outdoor temperatures. And that's why I mentioned earlier, taking field trips with your chickens can be really, really beneficial. So if you've got some nice weather out, then you can move those birds outside during the day, and then right at nighttime, as the temperatures start to dip, you can put those chickens back into the brooder. This is something that you can do all within a week time frame. But again, the biggest thing is you just want to acclimate them to the temperatures that are going on outside. The other thing that you can do is slowly start to wean them off of their brooder light or their heat lamp. So as you're preparing and you're a couple nights away from actually moving them out, I will actually begin to turn off the heat lamp so that those birds can begin to adjust to normal temperatures. So once you've got your chickens moved out to their coop or their paddock or wherever you're going to have them, you may be having issues with them flying over a fence or getting out. And the biggest way that you can eliminate this issue is by clipping their wings. And all you are doing is clipping the flight feathers on each side of their wings. This will really help eliminate them flying over fences and will keep them in their coop. Okay, so you've put all that time and energy into raising these chickens, and you need to protect them from predators. The biggest way you're going to accomplish this is with a predator-proof chicken coop. So I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but you've got multiple options when it comes to your chicken coops. You can do what's called a stationary coop, meaning you build it right here on the ground, you put some posts in the ground, you build a coop, and then you run a big fence around it. That's what's called a stationary coop. You're not going to move it anywhere. The other option is to do a mobile coop. Now, we have a mobile coop in our setup, and I'm going to show you a couple of types of mobile coops because I personally think that they have a lot of pros versus a stationary coop. So regardless of your chicken coop setup, I'm a huge fan of electric poultry fencing. This is portable, so it can be moved around very easily. And the great part about this is pretty much going to keep all of your ground predators out. Your raccoons, your coyotes, your skunks, your possums, pretty much everything that's going to try to eat your chickens that live on the ground, this will keep them out. And this fencing is by Premier One. We have a solar energizer here that electrifies this fence, and for us, we have had zero problems with any type of ground predator with this type of fencing. So whether you are going to put this in a stationary setup or you're going to move your chickens around, I would highly encourage investing in electric poultry fencing. So the other predator you may not be thinking of is aerial predators, ones that come from the sky, hawks, eagles, things like that. So on our property, we rotate our chickens around with a mobile chicken coop. You can see it there. We move it around with our lawnmower, but I'm going to show you a much smaller mobile chicken coop that you can move around just manually. You don't need any type of machinery. But when it comes to aerial predators, If you've got your chickens out in the open, you may or may not deal with aerial predators, especially hawks. Here in our setup, we don't really deal with aerial predators like hawks, but if you're dealing with that, there's some things to mitigate it with. One is you can get a guard goose. If you do plan on getting a guard goose, then I would suggest raising that guard goose with the baby chicks. So when you order baby chicks, just order a guard goose with them. The guard goose can help a lot at preventing aerial predators. Another one is what's called a livestock guardian dog. There are many breeds of this, and there's a ton of good resources on livestock guardian dogs. But if you are going to get a livestock guardian dog, it is an added expense, and that guard dog will need to live in the paddock with the chickens. At the end of the day, the biggest way to eliminate your chickens getting eaten by any type of predator is to lock them up at night. Make sure that your fencing is electrified if you're using electric fence. And at the end of the day, you just want things to be secure, and that's the best that you can do to protect your backyard flock of chickens. Okay, so obviously you're gonna need a chicken coop. You've gone through the process. You're gonna order baby chicks, you're gonna get them in your brooder, and then you're gonna move them outside. But you can't just move them out to nothing. You're gonna need to build or purchase some type of chicken coop. Now, if you are on some acreage, like we are, we're on 6 acres here, and you've got space to where you can move your chickens around on pasture and move them from different areas for them to range and forage, then I would highly suggest you doing that. And the way you're going to be able to accomplish this the best is with a mobile chicken coop. Now, we've got a mobile chicken coop here behind me that we personally built. And if you want to check out this coop, I'll give you a little bit of a tour of it on a different video. You can click the link above to that. We sell the design plans to this coop, but this coop holds a lot of chickens. You don't necessarily need one this big, but I do really encourage people, if you do have the space, then move your chickens around. Rotationally graze them with this fencing. You can basically move them every week from paddock to paddock, and that's not only going to fertilize the pasture that they're on, but it's also going to allow for really, really healthy birds. If you do build a static chicken coop, and I get that for some people that is your best option, the negatives to the static chicken coop setup is eventually what's going to happen is it's going to become a complete dirt lot. There's not going to be a single piece of vegetation in that setup, and over time toxicity builds up just from their manure load, and your birds can get sick. However, there are plenty of healthy chicken flocks that are in static chicken coop locations. But again, my biggest suggestion, if you have the space, rotationally graze and move your chickens around. You can also free range, which just means you're going to let the chickens roam wherever they want. The negatives to that is you may end up with chicken poop on your doorstep, and I don't know about you, but I don't really want that. Okay, so now that I showed you this large mobile chicken coop, I want to show you one that if I had to do it all over again and I'm just raising my own backyard flock of chickens, I would build this coop again. So let me show it to you. Okay, so this is the Chickshaw Mini-Me from Justin Rhodes. He's another YouTuber. If you don't follow him, you should. And this is his design. And it is a mobile chicken coop that can easily be moved around and can hold up to 16 chickens. This is actually the coop that we used for about a year, and what I love about it is it's really lightweight. We built it out of cedar, so your kids could come out here and move your chickens around. Anybody can really do it. You don't have to be big and strong to make it happen. Now, what's great about this is it is a chicken coop that basically is going to eliminate you having to clean it. It's got 1-inch wire mesh on the bottom, so all the manure falls through. And then it's just got a couple of nesting boxes in the back. It's a really simple design, and I really love it. Like, if we didn't run a farm, then we would continue to use this coop, but we have a lot of chickens. So it's really simple and easy. And that's another option for you if you're considering building a mobile chicken coop. All right, so let's talk about feed. We keep it pretty simple here on the farm, and we care about our chickens. We care about what they eat. And I'm not gonna get into the argument of conventional feed versus organic feed. We personally choose to use organic, non-GMO feed. And we actually have a little container here that we will put our feed in, and that we house our feed next to the paddock that our chickens are in, because again, we move our chickens around. So I always want to have a spot where I can have a bag of feed protected from the elements. And we don't put it in a feeder. All we do is we throw out the feed in the paddock that the chickens are in at the moment. And they'll naturally, didn't mean to scare them, but they'll naturally and go out there and pick up the feed off the ground like they would out in nature. Now, a couple of feed options that you do have. If you're wanting to buy the best, absolute best feed on the market that money can buy, then Scratch and Peck has it. They have an organic feed that is absolutely phenomenal. It is expensive, but it just depends on what your budget is and how much you can afford for feed. Obviously, you can go to your local feed store, or you can go to Tractor Supply and get some relatively cheap feed, or you can buy more expensive stuff. Okay, so let's talk about waters. We choose to use these vacuum waters. They're 5 gallons and they work really great. There's not another water that I would use. We really love these and we'll continue to use them. I do suggest you getting it up off the ground though, or else the water will get dirty as the chickens are around it. And it also gets it off the ground more at head level for them to drink the water. So we use just a little paver stone and we set the water there. Okay, so let's talk about caring for your chickens in the different seasons, especially when it comes to summertime and wintertime. I am a firm believer that chickens can handle pretty cold temperatures. We've actually had ours outside in this mobile chicken coop down to 0 degrees. If it gets really cold though, I do suggest you taking some precautions to care for your birds. But the biggest thing is too, when it gets really hot out, if you live in an area in the summertime where you can get 100 degrees, you're gonna wanna provide some shade for your birds. When it gets that hot, it is really hard on them. So you can either set up your mobile chicken coop around a tree, the paddock with this electric fencing. What we'll do is when it is really hot out, we will put it around a tree so they can all go under that and seek some shade. The other things that you could do is you could set up some type of shade cloth for your birds, and that will help them just stay cool in the heat of the summer. The best part of chickens though is obviously getting to eat the egg, but also getting to bless other people with it. If you found this content helpful, y'all hit that subscribe button and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.